Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again on our Friday afternoon live stream. Today I'm going to show you how to put together a foliage garland. Quite appropriate for this time of the year with it coming up towards Christmas. Look absolutely beautiful as a table runner. You can intersperse it with nuts and fruits and berries and all sorts of bits and pieces that are gleaned from the local florist. Alternatively, you can also use them for weddings, becoming really popular as a top table arrangement or down the centre of a long trestle table. So yeah, today I'm going to use soft ruscus. That's this foliage here. Now the beautiful thing about soft ruscus is that it is very pliable. It also has a natural arching tendency, so works very well draping on large arrangements or down the side of tables. So very useful foliage also because it actually will survive quite happily out of water for 3 or 4 days. So if you're making items up in advance, then it's absolutely perfect. If you can hear us loud and clear, if you can click on the like button, and then we know you're with us. And any questions that you've got, please do ask them and we'll try and answer as best we can. All right. So to start with, I'm going to put the ruscus together. Cut off the piece of the stalk that has no foliage on. So just cutting that off. So we've got that very blunt, stubby end. And then you twist one stem of the ruscus in and around the first stem. Now for extra security, you can actually use green twine. This is just garden string or garden twine. The beautiful thing about it is biodegradable. So if you're throwing everything away at the end, then you don't need to worry about removing this. I'm going to leave the stems or leave the ends quite long because I'm going to use that to tie in some eucalyptus and some other foliage later. Now I tend to tie both ends of the soft ruscus simply because it gives extra security. So if it's something that's hanging from a marquee pole or hanging from a high position, actually makes it really tough and strong because it's double tied. So as you can see, I'm pulling that quite tightly and it's not coming apart. Okay, so exactly the same process again. So take the next piece of soft ruscus and bind it around the last piece. So it looks seamlessly as though there's no gap. And again, just tie that so it's nice and tight and secure. And as I said, this is actually a perfect type of garland to use for wrapping around marquee poles, and it's something that can be made up in advance. So there's no reason why for a Saturday wedding or for a Saturday event you can't make it up on the Wednesday. Line a florist box with some cellophane. When the garland's finished, lay the garland in the box of cellophane, spray it with water, then fold the cellophane over to cover it, put a lid on the box and store it somewhere nice and cold. And it will happily stay like that for say 4 or 5 days. Okay, so just tying that second piece in.
So we tend to use soft ruscus quite a lot for garlands. Is there any foliage that you wouldn't recommend to make a garland with?
One of the most popular foliage to use in garlands at the moment is eucalyptus. The eucalyptus is fine, but it's not overly happy at being out of water for any period of time. So if you're making garlands up with euc, you need to do them the very latest the day before, really. They go black and very crispy when they're out of water for any period of time. So the softer foliage wouldn't lend themselves terribly well to a garland. like senecio or any of the slightly more succulent styled leaves. Foliage, sorry, getting tangled up here. Foliage that does lend itself as well to a good garland would be something like olive. The olive branches, they work quite well, and they've got that lovely grey tone as well. So the more texture, the more varieties that you add to the garland, the more of an interesting garland you'll get. Asparagus fern works very well in a garland because it gives a soft, fluffy texture as well.
What about ivy?
Yeah, ivy again is not overly happy at being out of water for any long period of time. So again, that's something that you would need to really do very latest the night before the event. If you're cutting ivy from a hedgerow, or you've got ivy that you're growing in the garden yourself, ideally cut it 2 or 3 days before you want to work with it and condition it so it has a good drink. Then, to be honest, you're giving it as much chance as you possibly can for it to last. So just tying that second piece in. So already you can see how nice and quick and easy that is to form the garland with the ruscus. I've just used one bunch there. And if you're enjoying us this afternoon, if you can press that like button or that love button, the little heart one, that would be really good. I get extra brownie points for that, so please, if you would, that would be really nice. So I would anticipate we've got at least 6 foot there, and that's just with one bunch of the soft ruscus. Now you can then go on to create what we call a double garland, so make another one of those and then twist them together. That just gives double thickness, but on this occasion I'm going to use some different foliage. I'm going to use this rather lovely Eucalyptus populus, which is seeded at the moment or buried, and I've got the Eucalyptus cinerea. The reason why I've chosen these 2 types of eucalyptus is we've got the lovely pale grey colour tone of the cinerea, and we've got the interest with the berries on the populus.
When do eucalyptus typically become available?
It is available all year round, but it does have a period of time during the summer when it's not at its best. And I tend to avoid it around about July time, because the new season growth as well comes in, and the tips are very soft and they'll flag and die quite quickly. So I tend to avoid it around about June, July time, but otherwise it is actually available pretty much all year round. So we've got, I'm just going to cut these branches off the eucalyptus. So you can see how it makes a really lovely contrast in colour to the dark green. So I'm adding a couple of bits of the cinerea and some of the populus, and again I usually cut the woody stems, the branches off, simply because it just makes it look unattractive. You don't get the flexibility that you would if you remove those. It kind of keeps the garland very stiff. So just binding some of the greenery in to, sorry, I can't see me. Now the little pieces of long green string that I left ready to tie in, I'm now going to use those just to add into, so that I can add the foliage into the garland. And what we've done really, rather than using a stay wire, which you can do, a stay wire or a piece of string, quite often if you've got a delicate foliage, by cutting string or rope or wire to the length that you want to produce the garland of, you can use that as your base and then wire onto that. I'm actually using the soft ruscus as my base.
We've got a question from Ruth to say, where can you actually buy the soft ruscus and the foliage?
From our website. So if you go on to www.treeandplant.co.uk, trianglenursery.co.uk, we have a full e-commerce website which shows all the different foliage that's currently available. It gives you the price per bunch. Now with the eucalyptus, you can probably see here, this is what we would call a 400 gram bunch. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we had 8 stems in that bunch. You can see some of them are single stems, some of them are quite branched stems. But if you work on an average of about 8 stems per bunch, that will give you an indication of how much you get when you purchase it. Basically, select your items, pop them into the shopping basket, then progress through to the checkout. It's just like any e-commerce site. You pay at the checkout and then they're delivered to you by courier. Because of the nature of how we buy at auction market, we do have quite a short lead time. So for example, if you've got a Saturday event, my suggestion would be to take delivery of your foliage or your flowers, or both, the Wednesday previous. That gets you a chance to get them, cut them, condition them, let them have a good drink before you start to work with them. In order to achieve that Wednesday delivery, you can place the order online from the previous Friday up until the Sunday evening. As I said, because we buy at auction, the prices and availability fluctuate daily, really. So we do have quite a short lead time. And obviously the varieties of flowers and foliage are subject to auction conditions. So, for example, at Christmas time and Valentine's Day, red roses and red products and red items do tend to be that little bit more expensive. So just bear that in mind if you are planning a future event on those dates. So
with the Sophroscus as well, I know it comes in a few different lengths, and also how many stems do you recommend per bunch?
Okay, so the depending on the length that you choose with the Sophroscus, it does normally have between 4 and 6 stems per bunch. I'm using the longest that you can purchase today, which is 135 centimetres. And you normally get about 4, possibly 5 stems to a bunch. If you buy a much shorter stem, like a 60 centimetres, you're more likely to get 8, possibly 9 stems per bunch. But if you're doing garland work, in my opinion, it's best to go for the longest stem possible, because it actually takes less time to put together. So, adding all the green. I'm sorry about that crashing. That's all the rubbish going into my bin. So you can see I'm adding the eucalyptus in as well now. Just finding the lengths of twine that I'd left to anchor those with. Just tying those in. And some more of the populus. And again, just cutting the woody stems off. And I group it in little bunches and then add it into the garland. So you can already see what a difference. I'll try and hold this up for you so you can see. You can already see what a difference just adding those few different pieces of foliage makes compared to the Sophroscus. Okay, so continue adding. So when you get a long branch of eucalyptus like that, you can actually add just the one piece in. You don't have to add clumps. And you can add the 2 different varieties in together as you go along. Try and find my... Okay, here you go. Just tying that in. Now, if you're doing a garland for a wedding that requires gypsophila added as well, again I would do that as you go along. Just add your little clumps of gypsophila, but once again I'm afraid that's something that you really need to do ideally the day before, because like ivy and like some of the other foliages, gypsophila is not overly happy at being out of water for any period of time. If you're adding roses, my suggestion would be, if you're not able to do it on the actual morning of the event, perhaps use some little water files, tuck the roses into the water files and then add those into the garland, obviously hiding the water files so that nobody can see them. And again, we sell the water files on our website, so if you're buying foliage, as the person inquired about earlier, if you're buying foliage and sundries, if you try and coordinate the order to all come together, you'll just pay the one delivery charge, as it will all come in one consignment. Flowers are, or all of our items are delivered by courier, and all the fresh items are flat packed and dry in boxes, so it is imperative that they are conditioned on arrival.
We've just got two questions. First of all, we've got Rachel, who said, if you go to add in roses for a wedding garland, would you just wire them and act as late as possible?
Yep, as I was just saying, actually, I just kind of touched on that. I would either wire them on the morning of the event, straight into the garland. I would, however, use parafilm just to bind the end of the rose, so it kind of seals the end of the stem and keeps as much moisture in the stem as possible. But ideally, if you're not able to do that, if you need to place the roses into the garland the day before, just use a little water file and tuck the water file into the garland so you can't see it. You can cover the water file with some lace ribbon or something attractive if you want to make a feature of it. Or another thing that might be rather nice is if you use a receptacle of some description. I was trying to find something here, but we'll use a gourd for example. You could put a little tiny container in there, pop your roses in, and then tuck that into the garland. So actually use something that you're using as a decorative item also as a container as well.
Like a little jar or a candle holder.
Absolutely,
or something.
perfect. A little votive or something like that. And then again, it's all part of the actual design rather than.
And then our second question from Mark is, I see you're using carbon steel scissors like mine. Are these better than the yellow Oasis scissors?
Absolutely, every time. Yeah, they are really sturdy, really sharp. They will cut through wire, though it's not necessarily something I would recommend. If you are using them to cut wire, try and cut the wire here rather than down here and damaging the blade. But no, they are a really reliable pair of scissors. You do pay a little bit more for them, but in the long run it's good value. The other scissors are fine, but they're not as heavy duty. I mean, these will cut through big thick stems. You can see I've been cutting through thick stems of foliage this afternoon. Some of the slightly less sturdy scissors, if you try and cut them, it'll actually slightly twist the stems, slightly twist the handle of the scissors, and then they're wibbly and they don't really work quite so well. So yeah, I prefer them.
We pay for.
Absolutely, absolutely. Same with everything in life, you get what you pay for. All right, so I'm nearing the end of this garland now. You can see how easily those scissors do cut through that stem. So the last couple of pieces of the Eucalyptus cinerea, just tying those into the end of the garland. Now, if you wanted to make the garland so that it's an even finish, by that I mean you've got both ends So at the moment I've obviously got a starting point and then a blunt finishing point. If you want them both to have an elegant finish, then when you get towards the end of this side, you need to start bringing the foliage in the other way. So if you get what I mean, so that you're actually making a mirror image of that end. Right, so I'm going to do that now. Tie that in. My stake. Some more of my populus. And again, I'm just making little clusters just to tie in. Okay. Right, lost the end of my string here. Here we go. Okay. So then you can see how that has a soft end as well as the other end, whereas by having a blunt end, looks like it's going in just one direction. So I've used on this garland, which as I said is around about 6 foot, I've used 2 bunches of soft ruscus, 1 bunch of Eucalyptus cinerea and 1 bunch of Eucalyptus populus with berries. That kind of gives you a bit of an indication on quantities that you'd need to buy for a garland. Having said that, it's obviously very dependent on how thick you want to make it. I mean, this one is relatively thick. I'll just clear the decks and then you can see. I don't know if that's a good angle for you, is it? So if you're liking us this afternoon, on this very cold afternoon, hit that heart button and then we'll know you're with us. And please keep the questions coming. I'm going to be here a little bit longer because I'm going to show you how you can decorate this. So although we have just had Halloween, we have some little pumpkins. Now what I've done with these is I've cut holes out of the little gourds and popped a little tea light holder into those. I've also spray painted some gold. And as with the famous Blue Peter saying, here's some I made earlier. Literally just sprayed those. Then all you need to do is just pop a little tiny tea light holder into the top of those. Then you've got a really attractive candle holder. Popping those in. Yeah, they're not quite dry. I've also also tied some ribbon around some of them as well, just to give that Christmassy attractive look. And you could even try it with little mandarins or oranges. And they would look really good studded with little clothes on the Christmas table. You could also tie little tiny bunches of cinnamon sticks now and again into the garland, and possibly some dried fruits as well, berries and nuts and things like that, all to give that Christmas feel. Then I'll show you, just disperse those in the garland. So you can tuck them into the garland all the way along. I just pop that decorative one in there. There's no reason why you can't have a mixture of all the different shapes and styles. Again, just popping the candles in. It's really easy. Best way to do that, just get some more candles out. So the best thing to do is to take your tea light holder, mark around the top of the gourd or around the top of the orange or whatever you're using as your candle holder. Oops. So literally drawn the shape on there with the pen. Then this is quite tricky with these because they're actually quite stiff and quite hard. Just cut down into the gourd, and it's exactly the same principle if you're doing it with an orange or any kind of fruit really, or vegetable for that matter.
So what are you using there? What tool?
This is a craft knife. Again, we sell these on our website. They are literally pence, I think about 59p each.
Yeah.
Really useful as a modelling knife and even as a vegetable peeler. So cut that round, cut the hole, and I'm just going to remove the core. I'm going to use the scissors just to pull that, pull that out with. As I said, they're quite stiff to get the middles out. There we go. So that's literally what you're left with. And then we just slide the little tea light holder in. It's as simple as that.
Perfect.
So got some more little gold ones here I'm just going to add into the design. No, there's no reason why there's no reason why these candles can't be lit, but obviously just be a little bit careful.
Made a run for it.
And they roll. Sorry about that.
Okay. So while Debbie's just finishing off, I hope you can hear me. If anyone's got any questions about what she's done today, we do have on our event calendar on Facebook the up and coming demonstrations that we've got planned. So next week we are making a traditional Christmas wreath, and then the next week we're doing some alternative Christmas wreaths, so with some eucalyptus and some other type of foliage if the traditional look is not for you. So have a look at our event page because we've got some fantastic demonstrations coming up. As I said, when Debbie's finishing off, don't hesitate to just ask some questions, and if you love what we've done today, hit that like button. We'd love to see, hear from you, just to see who's watching really, who our audience is.
And if you've got any particular styles of floristry arrangement, anything at all actually you'd like me to demonstrate, by all means let us know, because we're more than happy to answer questions and give you as much information as we possibly can. Alright, thank you very much for watching this afternoon. As I say, hit that like button if you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a lovely weekend.
So I just now give you a little close up of the garland that Debs has been creating.
Complete with gold fingers.